Did you somehow get double? Oh,
What do you mean?
I'm sitting here thinking, why can I hear 2 times the audio? But it's silly
Don't have
me. It's actually
YouTube
playing.
open.
I had YouTube open. I was like laughing because I was like, oh my god.
No. I wouldn't do that. Come on.
No, that's why I was bamboozled because I was like, Gabby wouldn't do that. She wouldn't tolerate that kind of behavior. But anyway, we are here. Hello and welcome. You are joining us live for the Investor Lab, the home for passionate people seeking a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. Gabby, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well, thank you. I'm actually really
This is very
excited about the
abrupt.
topic today. It's a bit,
Yeah.
a bit of a sidestep from sort of what we've been doing over the last few weeks, which has been very like heavily mechanical, very yang, very numbers driven, very tactical. So yeah, I'm excited for today.
It's funny. I was just thinking this just before we hit go live. I was like, we actually used to do a lot of these episodes. So if you're here, guys, if you are here live as well, let us know. I'd love to know. I could see a few of you have joined watching live, which is awesome. Let us know that you're here. As always, we really want this to be like interactive. So the more that you give us, the more we give you. But yeah, we used to do a lot of these episodes. And I think because we have actually been doing this podcast, if you are an OG listener, when did we start this podcast, Goose? We started it in
2019, late 2019.
2019, yeah.
Can you just hang on a second? Can you just imagine, just like we didn't start the business until, technically our birthday is the 1st of April, 2019.
It is.
And
we are April Fools.
Before we'd even finished that year, I'd written and launched a book.
Yes.
And we had a podcast.
Yeah.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Where did we get the energy?
I don't know. And grew the business and all that stuff. Like, it's crazy.
I know. Now I know why we're tired. Okay, that makes sense. That checks out.
That checks out. Well, I'm excited. Yeah, we have been, so for the OGs, we have done a lot of this kind of stuff in the past. And I actually think that, so what we're going to be talking about, just to kind of bring this in, so we're not talking just in atmospheric platitudes. What we're going to be talking about today is the inner game of investing, the psychology behind investing and getting started, and how it can hold people back and how to get through that kind of stuff. Now, the reason I think this is really, really important for everyone is investing is not just numbers. A lot of people say things like, "Oh, investing shouldn't be emotional. Investing should just." It's about the most emotionally driven thing you're ever going to do in your entire life. You are literally casting votes into the future you want to create. And the gravity of that is actually something that can both help you and can hinder you. And I think understanding the emotional and psychological side of investing is just as important as understanding the mechanical side of investing, because you need to be able to navigate yourself in order to navigate to the destination you want to get to. So I think that doing this kind of stuff is just as important as doing the mechanical stuff. What do you think, Gabby?
Yeah, for sure. I think as well as there's always going to be some people in anything in life, but like investing, that have success without kind of having these emotional roadblocks, like the self-sabotaging stuff that happens. There are going to be freaks of nature that like have no baggage and just totally have full confidence in themselves and just go after it. For most people though, we have self-doubt, we have uncertainty, we have this sense that it needs to be perfect, or we have this sense of, I don't want to make a mistake, so I'm just going to wait for something to happen. And this is what we're talking about today. We're pulling apart like all of the different elements that go into why that might be happening, and also how to pull yourself out of it. Because I think with a lot of this, there's multiple layers, but the first most important layer is really building that confidence in yourself, because that shapes all of your action, right? Like if you don't have that confidence in yourself and confidence in what you are doing, it is difficult to continue the path through investing.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think like one of the things that I always kind of comment on is that the largest cohort of property investors has got 0 properties. We talk about 71% of property investors never get past the first property, 90% never get past the second, but the largest cohort of property investors have 0 properties. They've got none because they can't get off the bench. They can't get started. And that's not just property investors. That's people in life in general. because
Yeah.
people are scared of failure, they're scared of loss, they're scared of all of these things. And as a result of their inability to confront and work through those challenges, they actually end up living a life that's too small. They don't actually achieve the things they want to achieve. And I think that if I look, I know that you've got a bit of an arc for this episode, Gabby, but that's the real thing that I really want to get into is navigating through that specific
Mm.
thing, that roadblock that is stopping people to get started. And it doesn't have to be getting started in property investing. To me, it's getting started in life. Henry Ford's one of his most famous quotes is, "Whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right." And I think that is so true in this scenario as well, because a lot of people have beliefs, and those beliefs shape their reality. And as a result, they never live the life that they truly dream of and truly desire. They just never get there, and they wonder why. And so
Mm.
unpacking that and unpacking some of those hurdles and unpacking how to get through some of those hurdles is really one of the things that I want to get through today.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and again, it's like people don't know, but every week we put together a bit of an outline. About this point, about 5 minutes in, we're already off the outline. So I feel like this is probably going to happen again this week, which is totally cool. I think you're just like, I'm on the outline.
What do you mean? I think I'm on the outline, aren't I? Am I not on the outline?
We'll wander. We'll wander.
I can't follow instructions very well. So
I know, man. I know. We've known each other long enough. We're all good.
okay.
I think it's also just like if we just riff about it, because it's something that we talk about quite a lot, because I think you and I somehow have ended up in somewhat of a guide position. Somehow this has happened with a lot of people publicly, with clients, with our business, with our team and everything. And a lot of the time, we have conversations with people, hear through their situation, give some guidance on what we think they should do and how they could approach doing things. And a lot of the time, people don't take action on that. And that's not an ego thing for us. It's more just like so many people have these mental roadblocks of actually just taking the action to do the thing.
Yep.
And I think particularly when it comes to investing, like a lot of people come to you for investing advice. They go, here's my situation. Here's where I'm at financially. Here's where I want to get to. And because of your experience and your knowledge, you can pull apart like, okay, what I suggest is you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. And you should ultimately, if you just keep going on that, you should get to your outcome. And it's a really clear, hey, this is what you should do. And this applies to investing, but I know you have these conversations with people all the time about like how to get the most out of their life. And you've got that analytical mind that you can break down like, okay, this is a really clear path. And so many people I know that you speak to will just still not take action on that, right?
Yeah, 100%. So there's two examples and two stories that I'd like to use to frame this up.
Yeah.
One really stands out to me. I had a conversation several weeks ago now with a young woman. I want to say young woman, 28 years old, earning $280,000, or maybe 29 years old, earning $280,000 a year. Single, like top 1%
cool.
earner for her age. She's getting flown around the world doing consulting and all that kind of stuff. And one challenge that she had was that she was unable to buy a home, right? Which is just crazy that someone that at that age with that income was unable to buy a home. And I've told this story before about how we were talking to my dad and they were able to buy a home for 1 times his annual income. And she was on that kind of an income and couldn't really afford to buy the home that she wanted to buy. And she was a fairly modest person, but she was in an expensive area. The problem, though, is that she got so caught up in over-analysis that she just couldn't get out of her own way. And so we walked through everything. We talked through everything. We explained everything. We built plans. We did all that kind of stuff. We said, okay, here is a very simple, clear roadmap to get you from where you are now to where you want to be in the time frame that you want to get there. But the problem was she just couldn't get past the indecision. And that's because so many, there's actually a study on it. I'm not actually sure if you've got the study in the notes. But there was a study on loss aversion, where basically people have 2 times greater loss aversion than gain attractance. And so people are twice as likely to not do something as they are to do something And so she said to me, and this is not a critique of her. This is actually just an observation. She said to me, I need time to process. And I said, okay, well, how much time do you need to process the decision? And she said 2 weeks. And I was like, well, 2 weeks, that's a really long period of time to, like, what is it you need to process? She said, I just need to think about it. I need to process. And we've stayed in contact. This must have been 6 weeks ago now. We've stayed in contact, and she's still just stuck in a loop, just a continuous loop, and she can't get out of the loop to get out of action. And that's one example that I'd like to use of this. I'd actually like to use a personal example as well, because I think that the biggest issue that people have in getting through this, because we can talk about that people get stuck in indecision, that people get stuck in analysis paralysis, they get stuck in all of this kind of stuff. The biggest issue that I think people have is they don't have a clear vision of the future. They don't have a clear vision of who they want to become. And you and I were actually talking about this last week.
Yep.
And I think that's actually one of the most important things. And if I look at this from a personal perspective, 8 years ago or whatever it was, I was a broke alcoholic, drug addict, and going nowhere. And through some conditions and circumstance, I was put into a position to actually reflect on myself and reflect on my life and ask, who am I going to be in the next 5 years? Who am I going to be in the next 10 years? Where am I going? Where is this taking me? And is this going to help me become the man that I know that I want to be? And the answer was no. And so I had to make a change. And then when we started Dashdot with $5,000, no safety net, no backup, no nothing. We had to walk around the supermarket eating food off the shelves when we started the business because we had that little money. But we were very good at being able to decide where we were going, building that picture of the future. And one of the key things that I think people need to do to start to break through these shackles of inefficacy, inaction, fear, doubt is to identify who you want to become. Get really clear. Who do you want to be in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 20 years' time, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter. And then ask yourself, what kind of actions would that person take? How would that person behave? What would they do? Like, a simple way to think about this is, let's say you're overweight and unfit, but you want to be fit and jacked and all of that kind of stuff. You can ask yourself, well, how would a fit and healthy person eat? How would a fit and healthy person act? What kinds of things would they do? Would they go to the gym regularly? Would they exercise regularly? Would they eat pizza every night, or would they have a balanced diet? Like, how would they and you can start to act as if, and your actions start to create your reality. And I think this is one of the biggest things that people need to get through, because everyone wants some version of the same thing. Everyone wants freedom. It's all just variations of the same theme, but everyone ultimately wants the ability to live their life on their terms, spend their time with who they want, do what they want when they want with who they want. Everyone wants some version of that, and there's just the details might be different. Some people want to do it on an island. Some people want to do it in suburban Sydney because they're close to their family. Like, everyone wants basically the same thing, just with a different setting. So then you really need to ask yourself, okay, well, what actions would need to be true, or how might I need to change as a human being for that to be the reality of my life? Because if you cast your mind forward 5 years' time or 10 years' time, for example, and you imagine your life and you've got a successful property portfolio and a thriving portfolio of diversified investments, and you're financially free and you don't have to work anymore, and you're spending your time with your kids, or you're sailing around the world, or you're doing all of that kind of stuff, you would have to ask yourself, what is different about that version of me and this version of me today? Is that version of me more confident? Are they more assertive? Do they make quicker decisions? Have they studied more, learned more? How did they get to that place? Then you just need to reverse engineer the identity piece, and you can start to act as if. Acting as if is one of the most powerful things you can do. And this is not lying to yourself. This is not making things up, right? This is not faking it till you make it. It is actually just saying, okay, this is who I am now. Another personal story of mine is I've struggled almost my entire life with weight, with putting on weight, managing weight. Weight fluctuates wildly, all of that kind of stuff. And just around about 3 years ago, I made a decision. I said, I'm going to become a bodybuilder. I'm going to compete in a bodybuilding competition in 3 years' time, before I'm 40. And the reason I chose a long-term goal is I had to decide, well, if I was going to do that in 3 years' time, what actions and behaviors would I need to start to adopt today to be able to do that? And so for the last 3 years, almost religiously, I've been in the gym 4, 5, sometimes 6 times a week, bodybuilding, because that's the identity of who, and now that's part of my life. Now that's part of who I am. That's not some like new fad. It's not a 9-week boot camp that I chose to do or something like that. That is part of who I am. And now that I'm nearly 40, now I know that when I'm 50, I'm still going to be lifting weights because that's become part of my identity. It's become who I am. When I'm 70, I'm still going to be lifting weights because it's become part of my identity. It's become part of who I am. And so if you want to be successful, you need to start acting as like a successful person would act. You know, one of the there's a very successful guy I've read a fair bit about him. His name is Bill Perkins, and he's
Mhm.
he's worth several
Die with
hundred million.
zero?
Yeah, die with zero, exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
So I was watching an interview with him, and somebody asked him, Bill, why are you more successful than other people? But there was some paraphrase. I'm paraphrasing the question, but like, what makes you more successful? He said, speed of action. He said, by the time that most people
Mhm.
have thought about the idea, I've already taken action on it, tested it, and worked out whether it works and pivoted to a new idea. And so you can start to identify that the people that are more successful are the people that are willing to take chances and necessarily have inbuilt optimism. Because going back to that original or that point that I was making earlier around the, I'm not sure if you have the study. I think we found the research of it, but the study about the loss aversion. Do you? Not sure if you want to.
I don't have it open.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, we can try because it's a really great study. We'll
I
find
can
it. We'll
find the
find it.
link. I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, perfect. Uh, the loss aversion study, and that really points to a huge thing. Now, optimists are almost always going to be more successful than pessimists, right? But then there's all the people
Mhm.
who sit in the middle. The people who sit in the middle, they still have 2 times greater loss aversion than they still have 2 times greater loss aversion than gain attractance. But optimists have an inherent belief that things are going to work out, and so they're more biased towards action. And because our amygdala is programmatically designed to give us 2 times greater loss aversion, we tend to not act even when we should. That's the bias that is
Mhm.
built into 90% of people. So trying to build in optimism, trying to ask yourself things like, instead of asking like, what if this doesn't work out? Ask yourself, what if this does work out? What if this all works out? That's a simple little hack to breed more optimism into your life because this is the thing that holds most people back is this idea that they're going to fail, that they're going to lose money, they're going to look bad, people think they're stupid. What if I do the thing and then it fails? Oh, how will I ever show up? I'm going to be so embarrassed. Everyone will think I'm a loser, or oh, I'm scared of my money. And it's like money. And I was very lucky to work this out at a very young age. And don't ask me how I worked it out, but somehow I established a point of view in my mind that the single tradable commodity on earth that you can always get more of is money. And this is before I knew anything about money printing or anything like that. But I was like, well, looks like you can always just get more of money. So that's the one you need to care least about. So, once you realize that the single commodity you can always get more of on earth is money, and that most people in your life don't really matter. The opinions of others don't ever really matter anyway. You can actually start to walk away from that fear of loss and that fear of embarrassment, that fear of shame that holds most
Mhm.
people back. And then you can start to ask yourself, okay, well, so what if this doesn't work out? Maybe I'll lose a bit of money. Well, I can make more of it. Maybe some people laugh at me. Well, they're probably not going to be in my life in 20 years at time anyway. So who cares? So then you get to ask yourself, well, what if this does work out? What if? Like, what if taking the step to start investing actually did work out? Maybe I'd make like millions of dollars. Maybe that would be really cool. So worst case scenario, I completely fail. And I don't know, I get scammed out of all of my money and everything goes to zero, which is just like crazy. And you lose 120 grand, let's just say, for example, or 100 grand, right? Whatever your starting capital is. Or maybe it all works out and you make 5 million. I mean, that's like a 50 times greater upside than downside. Yet people still get stuck in this loss aversion and
Mhm.
they get stuck in the fear of judgment of others. And I think, and I promise I'll shut up in a second, but this comes back down. This comes back down to really deciding, who are you? Are
Yep.
you the kind of person that's going to get scared away from those kind of decisions? Are you the kind of person who is going to rise up to be the greatest version of yourself? Who do you want to be in 5 years and 10 years? And just coming back to us and our life and to bring it back to a personal story, that is exactly how we got to where we are today. Now, I'm not going to sit here and, you know, you know, try and, 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 you you know, try and say that we have everything perfectly worked out. We don't, but we have actually created the life that we set out to create. That is absolutely true. We have built significant wealth. We live on. I remember you had on a vision board a beach with long-tail boats before you'd even been to Thailand. Didn't even know
Yeah.
what that was. We now live on a beautiful beach on a tropical island.
I can see
We've
the
built,
boats right now.
yeah, we can see, you can see the boats right now. We've built, particularly compared to where we were, we're not the richest people on earth, but we've built decent amount of wealth considering, 6 years ago we had $5,000 to our name, no safety net, no backup, no nothing. We've built one of the fastest growing companies in Australia. We've bought over $1.2 billion worth of real estate, bought over 2,000 properties in the last 6 years. We've got 124 employees. That didn't happen by accident. That didn't happen by getting stuck in indecision. That didn't happen by going, well, what if none of this works out? That happened because we decided what we wanted to do was to build. We wanted to build all of that. That was our vision. That was who we wanted to become. And that's how you get there. That's how you create that. And so starting with the identity piece, I think, is the key to actually working through the decisions that you need to make. And if you're looking at your life right now and you're not 100% happy, if you're looking, and it doesn't have to be investing, by the way, right? This goes for everything. If you look at your life and ask yourself, am I happy in all the areas of my life? Health, wealth, relationships. Are you happy in all of those areas? If not, who do you need to become to be happy in those areas? Maybe you've got a family, and I've got a picture in my mind of someone I know who's in this situation, married, 2 kids, terrified about what the future holds for their kids because they know how hard it's been for them to get ahead. And they've got 2 small kids under the age of 10, and they're asking themselves, what's life going to be like for those kids? They're terrified about what's going to happen for their kids, but they're so frozen with inaction. They've spent so long trying to build up their own nest egg. They've got their family home. They've got all this kind of stuff. And they're terrified. They know they need to take action. They know that the future of their family and the future of their kids depends on it. But they're so stuck in fear. What if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out? And they can't imagine themselves really. They know they want they know the life they want, but they don't believe that they can have it. Because if they believe they could have it, then they would have no hesitation in taking action. Because a belief is not a dream. A belief is, this is true for me. All I need to do is walk the path. I have already climbed the mountain. I just happen to be at the start of the trail. And that is the difference. And so working through this is anyway, I think I've riffed on this enough, but I think working through this, I think would be a really good goal. I think this is on track for the inner game, by the way, Gabby. I think we're on track.
I think you're looking at your notes. I'd love to dig more into the loss aversion stuff, but just quickly on the identity, like as you said, this is actually kind of the secret sauce to how we started. And again, I don't know if we've talked about this before on the podcast. We probably did years ago, but literally those exercises of going through and writing out, who am I going to become? Like who is that future version of myself in such clarity that you feel so excited about that future that you can't help but act in a way that's pulling you towards that. Like when I have that sense of clarity, I feel so pulled towards my action. I feel so aligned, and so it's just like a sense of excitement that is pulling me forward. And that it makes the action so clear, and it makes the fear of loss and all of the mental chatter that comes up really like nonsensical. It highlights that it's like that's just my mind trying to keep me safe because, biologically we're attuned to not being successful. We're attuned to just surviving physically in this world as a human and breathing. We're not designed to survive, thrive through successful means. We're designed to like make sure that we just stay with the herd and keep going. And I think that's important to realize that all of this mental chatter is just, it's holding us back from the path that we're going to. But it does really start with that vision of who you want to be. And I know that times when I've felt a bit lost or unmotivated, as everyone goes through, it's always that sense of I don't have clarity on who that next version is. And I know, again, we have these conversations with a lot of people about who um, with a lot of people who say that they have goals. And again, we try and reverse engineer it, but it's like, who are you once you've achieved those goals? And people don't have that clear vision. Like, we're trying to help people see that you need to be able to see it for yourself. You need to have this clarity on who you want to become. And I think a lot of people avoid this kind of stuff because it's like, I'll acknowledge there is a lot happening in the world right now, right? It's a challenging, crazy time, and I think a lot of people, particularly at the moment, are really in their head. Again, not discrediting. There is definitely external things that are happening that are kind of stopping people from taking action right now, but there's also a lot of that is just fueling more noise internally. And so it can be hard for some people to think through like, okay, but all of this shit is happening in the world. We're in such a crazy time. How can I possibly craft that vision? How do I know what's going to happen? And I think it's realizing that that part is in your control. Like, you still have control. Yes, there's stuff happening externally, but there's still things that you can work on yourself, like the vision for yourself, because all of this is so, like, this is the inner game, right? All of this is so personal. Nobody else can tell you what your vision for yourself is, but you have to do the work. You have to sit down and you have to think through future you and get out of the present and get out of the past. And I think this is, like you said, about optimism. Like, you and I, Goose, are particularly optimistic people, but we're also very vision focused. We're very
Mhm.
future focused, sorry. Whereas I think a lot of people get caught in thinking through the past, thinking about what they've been through, thinking about all of the things that have stacked up to get them to where they are today. And then in the present, in a negative context of identifying like all of the shit right now that's holding me back. Whereas if you can develop this focus where you are more focused on the future and in a way that is pulling you forward, I think that unlocks a lot of people. I think it's a really important thing to do, like you said, about clarity and the vision of who you want to be.
Yeah, 100%. So I think there's two things I'd like to share. After this, we could drop in the description. So the blog that I wrote on
Yeah.
self-actualization is the only worthy goal, and a
Yeah.
practical guide to finding happiness and living a deliberate life. Because I think some of that life design stuff is going to be really really important. Some great questions
Mm.
coming through in the chat, guys, and we definitely will get to them. So please keep
Awesome.
flinging them through because there's some really good stuff in there. But a couple of things that I want to just touch on because, and I want to evolve this conversation too because I think there's a few other points to touch on.
Yep.
But there's a quote by Joseph Campbell which I really really love, and it is, "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." And for
Yep.
most, it's such a powerful metaphor and aphorism because it is
Oh, I just
so,
felt that. Yep.
yeah. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you
It's
seek.
always, it's so true. Yep. Yep.
Absolutely. In everything, in everything. Are
Yeah.
you scared of public speaking? Well, almost certainly that
You need to
fear
step
is a
into it.
signal that
Yeah.
you need to step into it.
Yeah.
And it is stepping into the fear that helps you to become the person that you were born to be. And that is like such a powerful thing. Now, the challenge is when we start to do that kind of stuff, we get all these fears get thrown up in front of us. Oh my God, I'm so scared of all of this kind of stuff. But all of those fears, they're just ideas. They're not true. They're just thoughts. And so one of the things that I sort of do this on autopilot in my mind, I use Byron Katie's The Work. I just do it on autopilot in my mind these days. I don't actually sit down and kind of like programmatically journal it out or whatever. But if anyone's not familiar with Byron Katie's stuff, she's got a book called The Work, or I think that's what it's called, or the 4 questions.
Loving what is.
Loving what is, right?
Mhm.
But basically, there's 4 questions that she uses, and she's got a really powerful story. And I'm not going to, but the 4 questions that she started to ask herself to break out of her loops that she was stuck in was: number one, is it true? Number two, can I absolutely know it to be true? Number three, how do I react when I believe that thought? And who would I be without that thought? Now, those 4 questions are pretty powerful because they can help you to deconstruct lots of nonsense that's flying around in your mind unnecessarily. Because half the stuff that we believe or half the stuff that we think actually isn't grounded in reality. You know, the amount of times that people say to me, I can't do that. I'm like, well, hang on a second. Why not?
I know.
And they have no reason. And just simply asking one question, explain to me, why can't you do that? Causes people to stop and go, oh, shit, I actually can do that. And they realize that they're actually being called up to do something more important for themselves. And so actually just challenging your thoughts and beliefs is the first step to breaking through them. And you have to really start to ask yourself, like, what are the sacred cows? What are the beliefs that you have? And are they actually holding you back? Do your beliefs serve you? Because half the problem with the identity stuff is that people don't believe they're worthy. They believe that success is for someone else, not for them. It's like, well, does that belief serve you? Because last I checked, there's, tens of trillions of dollars of capital, actually nearly hundreds of trillions of dollars of money flowing around the world at any given point in time. Is it not feasible for you to get a decent chunk of that? Is it not feasible for you to own some of that, to be able to live your life in the way that you want? Why is it possible for other people and not possible for yourself? I firmly believe that anyone can create any life that they want in 5 years if they focus on it with the right intention and the right level of action. You can't just dream your way to success. I'm not a believer. So let me clarify. I am actually a believer in manifestation. I believe that through energy and frequency, you can manipulate reality to your will. But I don't believe that you could just sit on your backside and wish things into existence. Like in The Secret, where it's like, just imagine a bicycle into your house. Like I'm not actually, I don't believe that actually happens. You actually have to take the right intention action as well. So it's a combination of energy, frequency, vision, and action that'll get you to the life you want. But the action is the key bit.
Yeah.
If you want to build a successful property portfolio and create financial freedom so you can live life on your own terms and be a beacon of hope for your family and your community and give your family everything they deserve and all of that kind of stuff, we have to take the appropriate action. You're not just going to wake up one day with a 10 property portfolio and just like, oh, great, now I'm financially free. It's not going to happen by accident. You have to take informed action. And the thing is,
on that,
go on.
whoop, were you going to keep going through Byron Katie, or can I jump around?
No, I wasn't. I was going to move on to something else, courage, but you can go on Byron Katie if you want.
No, not on Byron Katie. It was actually I've got it later, but just the concept of action, and I think we'll probably touch on this a bit more, but not to go full like mindset guru, but Tony Robbins has a really great model on I think it's like the success cycle, and I think Mark Manson also in one of his books has a similar thing, but it's this cycle of action, results, belief, and potential. And the point with that, it's always about the action, because I think we're always waiting to feel belief. Like we're waiting to feel motivated, or we're waiting to feel like the sense of belief, but it's actually the action. Taking the action creates the results, which creates the belief. And then that fuels more action and more results and more belief. And it's this cycle of like that is in your control, but it's the action piece that's in your control. And that's the only way that you're actually going to get any more clarity on things, because you can try and sit here and just imagine all of the things that are going to happen and just perfectly map out a plan. But unless you are taking the action, you're taking that first step and you're actually moving through the plan doesn't mean shit. Yep. The plan is just an idea that you feel good about because your ego is saying like, right now I'm ready, or I'm a little more clear. But then something else is always going to pop up that's going to throw you back into like, oh, I've got a plan. Yeah. I've got to get more clarity. I've got to do this. I've got to wait for X. Whereas if you just do one thing, you start to get an outcome, and then you start to see it's about building this confidence again, like I said at the start, building this sense of belief that you can do what you say that you want to do. You need to decide what you want to do, and then you take an action that gets you closer to that.
Action always gives you more progress than planning. It does. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, as someone, because I'm quite visionary, that's the kind of like, I spend a lot of time planning, scheming, building up modeling and doing all this kind of stuff. I spend a lot of time doing that. So I'm not trying to dismiss that.
You do. I can confirm.
Yeah. I mean, I spend a lot of time doing that, but I actually, I am one of the rare few who turns those plans into actions very quickly. Right. So there's like a very short feedback loop between planning and action for me. Whereas most people get lost in the dopamine hit of planning and thinking that planning actually is reality when planning is not reality. Planning is you defining the steps to create your reality, but unless you do something about it, you're never going to get there. And it's funny that you went to the Tony Robbins thing, because I was actually going to say something pretty similar, that that you get confidence after you act. You don't have confidence before you act. Waiting for confidence before you act is like waiting to get fit before you go to the gym. It just doesn't work. Like, it's not how it works. You have to do
Yeah.
the thing. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he's known me for a long time. He's known me since I was in my early 20s. He's one of my very dear friends. Um, and we're on slightly different paths now. Like he's on a great path, got a great family, like, awesome. But he often says things to me like, "Hey, I wish I could make more money." I'm like, "Well, why don't you just go for it? Go for it then." He's like, "Oh, well, because I'm not really sure what to do." And I said, "Well,
Mm.
you could do this, this, and this. If I was in your shoes, I'd do X, Y, and Z." And he's like, "Well, that's easy for you to say because you already know how to do it." I was like, "Well, no, I didn't know how to do it when we started, though. Right? We
Yeah.
had no
Yeah.
idea how to do it. We
Yeah.
started, and then yes, now I know how that works. But the only reason I know how that works is because we started to do it, not because I'd learned how to do it and then started.
Yeah.
We started to do it, learned how it worked. Now I know because we did it, not the other way around. Not the other way around. I didn't study it. Then you have to just start to take informed action. You have to look some
But
degree of education.
the action is part of the study, and I think that's something to
Yes.
keep in mind. And I think people are so scared of making mistakes that they think that they have to have everything sorted out first, and then they won't make any mistakes. And it's like, if you just accept that shit's gonna go wrong, like, you are gonna make
Yeah.
mistakes and have that expectation, but then it also comes back to having the confidence that you will work it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you and I have. And again, it's like it's something that people can work on through taking action. It's like you take an action, you get in some kind of subpar situation, and you go, okay, how do I solve this? And then you solve it, and then you're like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. And then you solve it, you build the confidence, and then you take the next step. And that builds this cycle that you consistently do that over time. You end up with some kind of success in whatever area you're focused on.
Yeah, it's funny because I have a coach, like a personal trainer slash coach, bodybuilding coach, and it's quite funny because he always jokes that normally when he's coaching people, he's trying to encourage them to do more, but for me, he's actually just trying to make sure I don't hurt myself because I'm always saying like let's lift
Go.
something heavier, and I always say to him, "What's the worst that could happen?" To which he
Oh
always
man,
reminds
every
me.
time you say that, I laugh.
But no, but it's such a good frame because like, well, what's the worst that could happen, right? Now, if you link that back to investing, for example, so
Yeah.
many people choose not to invest and they sit on their hands and they sit on their cash because they were so worried that something's going to go wrong. So you really got to ask yourself, like, what's
Yeah.
the worst that could happen? Now, if you invested in the stock market, maybe there's going to be a 20% market crash. Okay. 20%. And then it's probably going to go up again anyway. Or what's the worst? You buy a property and it doesn't perform. Like it's worth the same amount in a few years as it is today. Like those kind of things would suck. But you know what? You know what's guaranteed to help you lose money is doing nothing. Like you're gonna suffer the ravaging forces of monetary debasement, and your money's going to be
Mhm.
worth 10% less each year every year anyway. So
Yeah.
doing nothing has 100% chance of failure. And this is the thing that most people don't actually don't factor into their calculus. Doing nothing has a 100% chance of not getting you to your goals. Doing nothing is the only way that you can guarantee failure. I guarantee you will never achieve anything that you want in life if you don't do anything towards it. So, what is the risk of doing nothing? It's 100%. It's 100% versus what is the risk of doing something? Maybe there's a 20%, maybe there's a risk of 20% loss or something. But people get so scared by that they choose
Yep.
the absolute certainty of failure over the possibility of failure, which is
Why do
of a
people do
much smaller
that?
failure.
Why do people do that? It's just it's a fear of there's so much
Mm,
ego in that, right? Like it's the
yeah,
fear of making the mistake. It's the fear of looking bad to people around them. But again, like you
yeah.
said, it's like we we only have one life. Reminder, everyone, we only have one life. We are each responsible for our own experience here, and the opinions of others just don't matter. And if you're living your life based on what other people think you should do, or because you're scared of being embarrassed in front of them, that's not living the best life that you can live.
No,
No.
absolutely not. You got to remember, and this is probably a good reminder because one of the biggest issues. So, there's people worried that they're going to lose their money, but the biggest thing is what other people are going to think of them.
Yeah.
And I would like everyone to just take a moment and think back over your life at all of the people you've ever met, all the people you went to primary school with and high school with, and maybe the people who you worked with at your first job or your second job, and really ask yourself how many of those people are still in your life. Like people that you might have hung out with. I still remember my childhood friends when I was in primary school. I remember their first names, their last names. I remember the things we did. I haven't seen them in 20 plus years. Their opinions don't matter. Like at the end of the day, we have one life. We're going to die. Everyone we know is going to die. Everything goes away. And I talk about death a lot, not on the podcast, but in general, I think about death a lot, not from some kind of morbid, depressive state, but as a reminder that we have one beautiful opportunity. We have this this crazy coincidental psychedelic moment that we get to experience all of this stuff and create whatever we want. And yet there are so many people thrust into that environment, and they're just worried that like someone who may or may not even be in their life in the next year might think something about them.
Yeah.
I mean, like what? I think
Yeah.
whatever you want about me. I don't care. I'm moving on. I'm growing. And, starting to kind of break through those kind of mental barriers, I think is essential, because you can, as I said, you can create whatever life you want in a very short period of time, as long as you decide what that is and are willing to act. Olivia put a great piece in here. The biggest piece I think people miss from manifesting is the feeling that you've already achieved it, because feeling is what tells our brain it's already happened in the future. And that's 100% true. So yeah, that is like, it is the belief that it is already true that creates the thing that we want in our life. Because if you want something, you're programmatically telling yourself that you lack it. Whereas if you already believe that you have something, then there's no frequency dissonance in your own life.
Yep.
And not to get too woo, right? But if I actually went and down the quantum science pathway on this, not just the spiritual, crystal.
We know you did.
But on a quantum level, the entire universe is frequency. The entire universe is just frequency, oscillating, vibrating. The only thing that differentiates anything from anything else is the frequency with which it vibrates. There's no difference between me, the air around me, and the computer. There's no difference between me and this microphone other than the frequency which we're oscillating at. And all time and space coexist all at the same time. So we live in this omnidirectional universe where everything that's ever happened and ever will happen, and every possible reality and every version of every reality already exists, existing in a super state, a quantum super state, where all potentiality, everything that could ever be, everything that ever has been, ever could be, all coexists in a quantum super state. And if we can choose to vibrate on the frequency of the things that we want, then those things appear in our lives. And so the vibration on the frequency means that you have to align yourself with the frequency of the things that you desire. And you don't do that by imagining them as things that you don't have. You do that by believing they're things that you do have, or believing that they're things that you already are. And a lot of the time, a lot of the issues that people have with this is the things they want, or the things that they say they want, are actually not things that are really aligned with themselves. And so they might say, I want a red Ferrari, where in actuality, they couldn't give two shits about a red Ferrari, because that's actually it's not aligned with their values. It's not aligned with who they are. And so then they wonder why I've had a red Ferrari on my vision board for the last 10 years. And it's like, yeah, but they don't actually want the red Ferrari. I was one of those guys too. Like I have personally manifested the most amazing realities for myself and with you, Gabby. But I found myself at a point a couple of years ago where I was like, yeah, I want jets and I want this and I want that. And I woke up one day realizing that I had no desire for any of that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
None. My life would not be better with those things in it. And in fact, the path that I wanted to walk, the person I wanted to become, had nothing to do with it. And as soon as I took those out of my life, I felt calmer, happier, because I realized that everything that I had wanted, I already had. And this actually goes back to one of the comments in the chat here. Let me just find it actually. Actually, it's from Olivia again. She said, it's about the journey is absolutely true for me. What's your theory around achieving one thing and then moving on to the next? So I believe that is good as long as it is aligned. The issue that I had and the challenge that I faced on this journey was I created everything I set out to create. And I felt like the only way, I felt like the thing that I needed to do was to continue to try and seek more, to strive for more, 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 more. Well, if I've got this, then I have to go bigger. The business has to be 10 times bigger. Right. Bearing in mind, like 6 years ago, we were living in a property that we still affectionately call the crack den. We had $5,000 to our name. Like 6 years and 1 month ago. 6 years and 1 month ago today, we had nothing. So then we've created a lot, and then you start to stretch your mind and go, well, if I've got that now, I've got to have more. And your mind starts to programmatically go more, 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 but more is not the answer. And in fact, we live in a very beautiful apartment in a very beautiful location. And just like as soon as we moved in, I was like, this is amazing. It was everything that I had in my mind's eye. So there was some very specific things that I'd always wanted. I'd always wanted to live right near the beach, but not be at sea level. I wanted to be elevated above sea level so I could look down on the beach. And this was all the stuff that I had in my mind's eye. I wanted to be able to see the water. I wanted to be able to walk. I wanted to be just a couple of minutes walk from the beach so I could walk down to the beach and swim whatever I want. But I had this vision that the house was elevated and there was this like perspective and all of this kind of stuff that I had in my mind. That's exactly where we are now. To walk from our door to the ocean takes me 3 to 4 minutes. That is a very short walk. There's nothing between us and the ocean. We're elevated above. We're not at sea level. We're above, and there's nothing between us, and we look down on the ocean. That is everything that my mind's eye had always asked for. And on the very first day that we moved into this apartment, I was standing on the balcony and looking out, realizing that this is everything we'd ever looked for. And I asked myself, I wonder where we're going to move next. And then I started, and I was like, I wonder what the beaches are like in Ghana. I wonder what the beaches are like in Costa Rica. No, legitimately, Gabby. I was like,
I know you were, yeah.
And then I said to myself, what am I seeking?
Mm.
What am I seeking? What is it that I want that I don't have?
Yeah.
like what is it that I really want that I don't have? And it's a really good reminder that this perpetual pursuit of more can actually lead to really high degrees of unhappiness. You asked me when we very first started dating, and I asked you, I said, what's wrong with you? And you said, what's wrong with me? And we tried to work out how we were each weird. And I said, the one thing that's wrong with me is I'm never satisfied. And that can actually be a problem. So Olivia, to your point, like wanting more is good, but as long as its values aligned. Because if you get lost in the opinions of others, just in the same way that the opinions of others can stop you taking action in the first place, they can stop you from ever moving towards your goals. They can also cause you to seek goals that aren't yours in the first place. And that is a path to unhappiness. So you can become wildly successful and still be unhappy. And this is why it's very important to define who it is you want to become, not who you think other people think you should be, but who do you want to be? And then build that life, because you only have one. So you might as well make it yours.
Yeah. I think with the way that the world is right now and social media and just our habits of comparison with other people, I think it's so easy to fall into the trap of wanting more and not taking the time to clarify, is that actually what I want? And again, we see people, you hear people talk about setting goals, we got to be ambitious, we got to have hustle, we got to be entrepreneurial and make our own way in the world and achieve things and then achieve more things and blah, 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 which if that's what you genuinely want, then go for it. But for a lot of people, you do hear stories of like, I achieved all this success and I just was not happy because we didn't take the time to actually think through, is this what I genuinely want? Is this who I am? And so like for me, myself personally, I am quite ambitious, but also now I'm at a point where like I'm realizing that I really care about friendship and I feel like I haven't invested enough time whilst we've been building our business into that element of my life. And I think earlier in the business, you have this mindset of like, oh, maybe I just don't care about that as much. Like, that's not who I am. But now, as I'm evolving, I've achieved success in certain areas of my life, like business, and our relationship is amazing. And I'm realizing through action, again, all of these years we've been taking action, I'm realizing that, like, okay, maybe my values are a little bit different to what I thought they were. And now I have that opportunity to re-clarify who I am and what I care about and being able to work on things that get me closer to that part of my life. And so, um, live like you said about like resetting what you want next, I think is also a part of this. It's about assessing our whole life and think about where has my attention been? Where have I been taking action to this point? These areas of my life I am satisfied in. What else do I feel is an opportunity for expansion next? Where else can I put my attention and step into the vision that I have for myself and not getting caught in I need the private jet or I need the 50-foot yacht or something like that, which can make us feel good. They can make us feel super ambitious. They can make us think that, okay, I'm going to build a certain level of wealth and then I'm going to have this external thing. It can help to motivate action, but also it can really hollow out the experience if it's not what you genuinely want. Um, yeah, so I think just that concept of clarity, again, it comes back to clarity, but you will often not get the clarity until you take the action. And so even with goals, I think a lot of people also avoid setting goals because they're concerned they're going to pick the wrong one as well. And so there's a
Yeah.
perfectionist element in that, even of like, oh, but I don't know what my goals are. It's like, just pick what you think they are right now or what your values are right now, and then start doing action that are aligned with that. And then you will realize, oh, I'm actually not motivated by that at all.
Yeah.
I said the wrong thing. And that's okay. That's okay.
I like to think about prototyping in that context because you're 100% right that a lot of people get stuck because they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
And so that's why you need to start a process of prototyping. Like, I don't know, like, do you want a Ferrari? Maybe rent one for a day, drive it around, see how it
Mm,
feels. Like,
yeah.
just actually be like, because maybe just driving it around for a day fulfills the entire vision you had for it. You're like, all right, that's done, box ticked.
Mm, mm,
Like, I know that you and I, we had the opportunity to fly in a private jet with a mentor of ours in the US. And it was so cool. You know, like it had been on my vision board for ages to on this private jet. And we did it and it was awesome. And I would do it again, but I certainly don't feel the need to own a plane.
No.
Like I was like, oh, great. Like that vision in my mind it happened. Like it was so funny because even the plane that we were on looked like the one that was on my vision board. Like perfect.
Yeah, it happens. It
Box
happens.
ticked. Like
Yeah.
box ticked. Okay, great. Now I don't need to do that thing anymore. And so if you're not sure, just start writing out a list of things that you think might be true. Like, because I remember as well, like once we started to make a little bit of money, we were like, all right, you know what? We're going to like eat out all the time. We're going to like go to these fancy restaurants. That's cool, by the way. So we still like going to fancy restaurants, but you can't go to fancy restaurants all the time. Like you can't, like it actually becomes annoying because you're like, oh my God, it's like a couple of hours. And so all these things you think that you're like, if you had all the money in the world, you would do all this fancy stuff. You start to realize that like fancy things are nice from time to time, but it's actually the intermittent nature of the beauty that makes the beauty what it is, not the consistent nature of it. And Mark Eisenbeiss, nice to see you there, Mark. He put in there, yeah, stop comparing yourself to the Joneses, which is so counterintuitive in today's Instagram society, which is so
Mhm.
absolutely true. You know, there's a
Mhm.
lot of people in the property space who get caught up in ego metrics. You know, I've got 5 properties, 10 properties, 20 properties, 50 properties, 100 properties. My property portfolio is worth X and yada, 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 all this kind of stuff. That's great. I'm very happy for all of those individuals, but it can be pretty toxic. In fact, I was mentoring someone the other day who was completely lost in their business. When I say lost, they were doing a lot of stuff, way too much stuff. They had all these different strategies. They were creating content. They were doing this and all that, but they were unhappy. And I said, hang on a second. Can we just slow down a little bit? What of all of these activities that you do, what actually makes you happy? Like, what do you want? And we basically took him from a 60-hour week to a 20-hour week. And he's now actually making more money
Mhm.
because he's just doing the things that he wants to do. He's working working 5 hours a day, spending time with his family, going to the beach in the afternoon with his kids. Business is making, you know, probably
Yeah.
100% more profit or 50 to 100% more profit. And his life just got a hell of a lot easier because I convinced him to stop caring what other people on the internet. Because I said, why are you
Yeah.
doing that strategy? He's like, because I saw it on the internet. That's what think I should do. That's what everyone seems to be doing. So that's what I'm going to do. It's like, well, that's not a good reason to do it. Does it make you
It's not
happy?
good.
No, got it.
Yeah.
No, I don't like doing it. It makes me
Yeah.
angry. Like, stop doing that then.
Stop doing it.
Stop
Yeah.
doing that. Stop doing that. Just
You were going to finish?
yeah, I was just going to say, there's one point that I want to make, and it's related to the action taking piece. Because a lot of people have the fear of taking action, and they forget that courage. So I've got it written down here. Courage isn't the absence of fear; it's action in the presence of it. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, because everyone wants to wait until they're kind of waiting till they don't feel scared. They assume they shouldn't feel scared when it's time to make the decision. Yeah. And I don't know, like, think of any big decision you've ever made, and you've probably been scared. I don't know if you've ever asked anyone out on a date. Like, you're nervous as hell. You're like, oh my God, it can be feel like, and that's just asking someone out on a date. Like, I don't know, there's probably plenty of people here who have like gotten married. That's a pretty big thing. You know, trying to get a job that you really want to get, going overseas for the first time by yourself. Like, all of these things carry some level of fear, making a big change in your life, anything. And but if you waited until you were ready, you just wouldn't do any of the things. If you waited until you didn't feel any fear, you would never take action on anything, which is in fact what happens to a lot of people. And it's becoming a real problem. You know, like the loneliness pandemic is becoming so much bigger because people are so scared to take action that they assume that everything has to feel okay. And they're not comfortable with discomfort. And the fact of the matter is, if you want to achieve anything in life, you have to get comfortable in discomfort. Everything you want in life is on the other side of your comfort zone. Like, you have to get out of it. And this is an essential part of taking action in every aspect of life. But I see it so much in investing, because people are worried, like, even you know, talking to people about their savings rates and all of that kind of stuff. Like, all right, okay, so maybe a property they want to buy is going to be, I don't know, $2,000 cash flow negative in a year, or let's just, for the simplicity of the conversation, say it's going to be $12,000 negative cash flow a year. That's $1,000 a month. And maybe they can save $3,000 a month, but they're not used to the $1,000. And they go, oh, that's $1,000. It's like, yeah, but it's also your future. You know, and so people are not prepared to get uncomfortable for a short period of time so that they can live the life they always wanted. They're not prepared to sacrifice now for later. And that's, I think, a big issue. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to comment on just a little about what you said about like content creation, because I think this is actually a really interesting thing. Now, I don't know if anyone listening is a content creator or has some kind of social media following. I don't know. But I think it's a really interesting thing just from like your and my experience, Goose, as kind of somewhat public faces and running this business, because it would be very easy. And sometimes I fall into this panic of like, we're not doing enough in terms of like growing my personal brand or your personal brand and becoming this like thought leader, content creator in the property industry space, right? And we have gone through this so many times over the years, and we just keep coming back to like, that's not who we want to be.
Yep.
And like last year, year before, we spent some time like really creating content with you. We did a bunch of YouTube. It was like, yeah, I don't know if it was like 6 months or 9 months or something, but you know, we invested in the team, we invested in the gear, we set up the channels. You were so miserable. Yeah, and it's so not miserable. Because you're not like, you spit so much value all the time. And I think that's why it's like people assume that it would make sense. And we want to be able to give that value to people because you're so insightful and wise and helpful for people. But the process and that experience of constantly creating content made you very unhappy. And so why would we build that as like a strategy for our business if you're going to end up miserable? It just doesn't make sense. And I think so many people don't think about this when they go down this path. They're just like, well, that's what I have to do to be successful these days.
But that's also why we came back to doing this podcast, right? So exactly. It's because actually, and so Olivia, you asked earlier in the chat, who do you want to become, Goose and Gabby? Now, I'm not going to
Mm.
give you. I am very clear. I have a 5-page document which very clearly articulates who I am, not who I'm going to be. Who I am, the person I am that is just at the start of that trail. The person I'm growing to be. One of those is is that we would create content. Is that we would actually contribute to the world by wanting to give back. We want to be able to share. We want to be able to inspire. We want to be able to help people to escape the status quo. The challenge is like, how do we do that? And it's the style and the format of the content. But that's why we started to do this podcast again, is because we said, if everything went away tomorrow, if we clicked our fingers and Dashdot was gone and we were just going to do whatever we wanted to do in our lives, what would we do? And we said, well, we'd probably want to have a podcast that helps people to escape the status quo, to build wealth, to create freedom, to become the best version of themselves. And we're like, well, that sounds like the Investor Lab. That sounds like what we had. So why don't we just do that again? Why don't we just come back? And that's exactly why we started doing this. It's not some, Dashdot marketing strategy. It's actually us showing up because we really want to help, because we care enough to want to commit to showing up every single week to helping people. And so, yeah. Am I a 5'1", Gabby? Am I a 5'1"?
I'm a 5'1" Liv.
But yeah, it's because we wanted to show up and help people. So we're doing this because this is what we want to do, because this is our passion. It's not because it's a business strategy, right? It just so happens that the things we care about is also the reason we built our business. The reason we built the business is not because we were like, oh, there's a great opportunity in the real estate sector, and if we just capture a certain amount of market potential, we can become rich. It was actually, you know what? There's a whole bunch of people out there trying to escape the quicksand that we were in. I wonder if we can help them. Wouldn't it be cool if we can help people? Yeah, that'd be sick. Now let's go build a business that helps people. Okay. And now we create content. Why are we creating content? Because we want to help people. Because that's sick. Because that's cool. That's fun.
That's cool.
That's actually how that's what we want to do. That's what we would do in our spare time. If you happened to catch up with us for a coffee or a dinner, I guarantee you would turn into a philosophical discussion around money, investing, freedom, happiness, wealth, all of these conversations that we have all the time anyway. And so my strong encouragement to everyone is to actually start to take action towards creating the life you want, because you can create that. Everyone has that capability within inside themselves.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go next with this conversation, Gabby?
I lost my train of thought.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. What were you just saying?
Well, I was talking about us doing this because this is our truth. This is our.
Oh, yeah. No, I was thinking through, like, so for me personally as well, Liv, you asking about like who we want to be, like an area, like I said, we have gone through a lot in the last 6 years that have gotten us to certain levels of success in more the traditional ways of thinking through success, like business and financial and everything. And so for me, the next phase is me trying to tap into that creativity. And I bring that up because it just ties into what we're talking about, content creation, and it's trying to figure out, and Goose is the same, it's like we're trying to figure out the mediums that work so that we are aligning with, again, that vision for who we want to be, but we feel like excited to do it. And again, it all comes back to like clarifying what we want and who we want to become, or who we already are, that indicate the action. Because if you don't have clarity, you just take action and then you don't align with anything. Basically, you just end up running around in circles or doing nothing because you feel overwhelmed. I think tying this back to more investment, I guess, because like you said, we started all of this because we just wanted to help people. And I think this is actually an interesting conversation to have around like where investment fits into this life piece, because we're quite philosophical and we care about people just improving their lives, but we've chosen to focus on money and wealth and that area of life. And so for me personally, it's like money and financial freedom and financial security, it's about enabling all of the other aspects of your life. It's like it's a foundation of getting you to a position so that you can do whatever else that you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
If you want to take your family on around the world trips every year, you can do that. If you want to grow a personal brand and just talk about Pokemon cards, you can do that and not have to worry about how do you monetize that. That's why we do any of this. It's like we want to try and get as many people as possible to that position where they have choice. And I feel like a lot of people feel like they don't have many choices right now. And so this for me is why we invest. This is why we do any of this. This is so we can get to that place of I have options and I have sovereignty over my life and the way that my life is going. That's why for me it ties back into investing.
I think most people. I think a very important concept for people to remember is that investing is the vehicle and not the destination.
Yeah.
Money is not the destination. Money is a vehicle to help you to achieve the things that you want. So I'm lucky that I get to speak. It's quite funny that my for anyone wondering what the comment around 5'1" was, my sort of my human design type is that I'm a hermit, role model hermit, right? So my natural
You
proclivity
are
is
very
to be
much a hermit. Yeah.
very much so. I'm a tremendously introverted. I prefer to spend all my time alone, but yet somehow I still end up spending most of my time talking to people, which is also amazing for me because I love to help people and I love to get insights. And I was talking to someone the other day who, again, was broadly dissatisfied with the level of success they had. They had a lot of success, but then they were unhappy because they were caught in this tension of wanting more. Wherein actually I said, well, what is it that you want? And they wanted to spend more time with their family. And I said, well, realistically, you could do that right now. Like if you were prepared to, because, this individual earns a significant amount of money. And I said, if you were prepared to go down to $100,000 income, you could live off your investments right now, which is like, imagine for most of the people listening to this, to know that you could have $100,000 passive income coming from your investments. Like that is the goal for most people. Like that is the aspirational goal for most people. This individual was there and was unhappy because they were working all the time and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, you could just, like, their lifestyle is, costs several times $100,000 a year. I said, you could just cut back your lifestyle. You could just rent somewhere cheaper and spend all of your time with your family. You could have, like, most people would, like, they would love to be able to live on 100 grand a year. You could do that right now. So what price are you prepared to pay? Are you prepared to sacrifice your lifestyle for your freedom or not? Because understanding what you're optimizing for is really the main thing, because you can create, or you could have $1 billion, but if you're still chasing something else to put in your life, you're never going to have enough and you're never going to get off the hamster wheel. So investing is a vehicle to create the life you want. It's not the goal. Wealth appreciation, wealth accumulation, monetary accumulation, wealth preservation, these are all really just mechanisms to transport your economic energy through time and space so you can spend it at your desire, at your leisure, at a time of your choosing in the future. It's really all it's about. And defining what specifically it is that you want is the first step. That's the very first step, because then you know what you're aiming for. And for most people, you probably realize that it's not as big as it's not actually that far out of reach. It is entirely possible for the everyday Australian to be able to build a net worth of several $1 million in several years. It's entirely possible. All it takes is commitment and focus, probably a little bit of sacrifice, a little bit of determination, and you can get there. And then you can go do whatever you want, basically. And so taking a choice on that path is very, very important. So that's how I would think about this time back to investment, because whether it's investing in real estate, whether it's investing in other assets, we've started to talk about other stuff too. The key is understanding that the single function, the utility of building wealth is to create freedom. So you're not just investing to invest. Yep. That's why we've talked in previous episodes about hurdle rates. That's why we talked about different assets. Like there's different mechanisms, and the goal is freedom. The goal is personal sovereignty, the ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want. That's the goal. And unless and until you can deem yourself worthy of the future that you desire, unless and until you can take action towards those goals in spite of the fear you may feel, unless and until you can ignore the opinions of others, unless and until you can really decide that you are willing to do what it takes to get to that future, you will not get it. But if you do decide to do all of those things, then you will arrive there sooner than you think. As I said earlier, anyone can create any life they want within 5 years. And the point that Olivia touched on earlier, and I was trying to remember the quote, was from Neville Goddard: assuming the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Because all fear disappears when you believe your reality to already be true. The only reason you have fear and anxiety is because what you're looking at is the gap between where you are now and where you want to be. And you get scared about the void. You get scared about everything that might have to happen for that to be true. But if you take who you want to be and who you are and merge them together and assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, believe it to already be true, then you don't need to be scared about the journey because the journey isn't there.
Hmm.
And all the anxiety goes away. You don't have to question, am I the type of person who, no, because you already are. You already are. And that actually helps you to take away that anxiety. There's, by the way, there's a little framework that I dug up to help people work through this, and it's called the 3C loop. So the first step is to take small action. That's going to give you clarity. So we were talking about that earlier, Gabby. Like take some kind of small action. That's going to help you get clarity. Is this even what you want? Is that the kind of thing you want to do? Acting in despite of fear is courage. That's the second C. And then consistency breeds confidence. So clarity, courage, and confidence. It starts with small actions. It starts then acting even despite fear, and then doing things consistently. Consistency breeds confidence.
Mhm.
A lot of people are scared of going to the gym, for example. They're scared. They're daunted by it. It feels intimidating. It's a really common, very common thing that stops people going to the gym. They're intimidated by it. I'm not in good enough shape to go to the gym, which is like a crazy oxymoron in and of itself because you go to the gym to get in shape. But that's what stops a lot of people going to the gym because they don't feel like they're ready. They don't feel like they're fit enough to be in the gym. But I guarantee you, if you go to the gym every single day, after about a week, you're not going to be worried about it because consistency breeds confidence. So taking consistent actions regularly. Discipline is the pathway to unlocking everything you want. The discipline of showing up for yourself consistently to be that version of yourself. And Gabby, you know that I do this every single day. Like the habits and practices that I've built into my life that are so deeply bedded in that nothing changes them, no matter where we are, who we're with. I do those things anyway, right? Whether it be
No matter
walking,
what I
working out.
want on any given day.
Look, there's plenty of time outside of these habits,
We
right?
have
For you to get
scheduled
what you
fun
want.
time between 4 and 5 p.m.
But it's because I know that the consistency of my behaviors helps me
Yeah.
to change my identity, and that identity gives me, and that consistency breeds the confidence. All of these things ladder up: the consistency, the identity, the confidence, to actually building the picture that I am already the person that I'm becoming.
Yep.
And that's the big shift. And
And
if
I
you can
mean,
apply
like,
that, go on.
just the results speak for themselves in terms of like your approach to your life and discipline in that aspect. Like, it may be different for people to have that amount of discipline and commitment to like using their time effectively, but what you are able to achieve and who you've been able to become, like your transformation that I've been lucky enough to be part of and witness, like those results speak for themselves. So it is something to pay attention to.
Yeah. So I think we've
Um,
go on.
I just wanted to ask you a question with that framework in mind, I guess. So if
Sure.
someone's listening and they are, let's again take investing specifically, if they're in a situation where they feel like something is holding them back, like they're just waiting for something, they're like, I just need to wait for interest rates to come down a little, or I just need to like be in this slightly different situation. I need slightly more borrowing capacity. I need something external. What is your advice for that person?
The first thing I would ask is it true? Because
Mm.
a lot of people put up roadblocks, and they say, you know what, I'm going to invest, but I just need to wait for interest rates to come down. Well, why? Like, why? Why do you have to wait for interest rates to come down? Thanks, Mark. Nice to see you. Hope to see you next week. Why do you need to wait for interest rates to come down? Well, because when interest rates come down, property prices are going to go up. Yeah, probably. So why wouldn't you invest now? Like, why would you wait? Like, if you can imagine the future, why don't you just do the thing now because you get the benefit of it? Oh, maybe I'll get a loan on a slightly lower interest rate. Yeah, you just get a variable rate loan and refinance it later. Who cares? Like, it's all good. Like, don't worry about it. I would invest, but I don't have enough money to invest in property, so I can't invest. I need to wait. Well, okay, could you invest in something else that could accelerate your capital? Oh, but I'm scared. Okay, so what action could you take to start to remove some of that fear? You don't have to invest in everything. You just have to invest in one thing. So how would you work that out? Start taking small actions. Going back to my friend that I was talking about earlier who wants to make money. It's like, and he doesn't know how. It's like, there's information everywhere. Have you tried just going on YouTube, how to make money in 2025? You're going to find like 100 videos that are full of shit, right? But you're going to find some insights in there. You at least get some threads to follow.
Mhm.
Like taking action doesn't mean taking uninformed action and just, yeeting all of your money into fart coin or something like that just because. Look at me, I'm taking action. I'm going to take I need 80 or $100,000 to invest in property, but I've only got 50. So you know what I'll do? I'll go take 50 grand and I'll put it all on black at the casino. That doesn't make sense. That's stupid. Right? But what you could do is you could start to say, okay, well, if I wanted to turn my 50 grand into 100 grand in the next 5 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, what would I do? And start to take action, because that action is going to give you clarity. And by the way, it could be taking small action in a small direction. You might have an idea that maybe Bitcoin is a good idea. Well, don't take 50 grand and put it into Bitcoin if you still don't know what Bitcoin is, right? But what you could do is you could take $500 and you go through the process. I wonder what it would take. Wonder how I'd get that stuff set up. Wonder how that works. And yes, guys, Fartcoin is a real thing, actually, believe it or not. Like, how does it work? Because a lot of people get stuck with the fear. They get stuck with the fear of I don't know how this works. Well, okay, so one question that we've been asked frequently. Okay, so I've got Bitcoin. How do I put it in self custody? You buy a wallet. How do I do that? Go on the internet and search for best Bitcoin hardware wallet. like buy it. Follow the instructions that they send you. it's like,
Yeah.
oh, what? And so let me just kind of continue to riff on this for a second, because it is taking these small actions that moves you closer. It is deciding to invest your time. And by the way, prioritization and thinking about how this fits into your life is really, really important. I have a project that I'm not prepared to talk about yet, that I mentioned to someone the other day, and I'd just been talking to them about prioritization. And I said, oh, well, I've accidentally started this new, very major project. And they said, well, you were telling me not to chase shiny objects. And I said, well, I actually made a decision about where this fits into my life. I said, there's 90 minutes every day where I could watch Netflix or I could work on this project. So I'm taking small action towards it. I'm like, okay, cool. I can work on it then. I don't know, Gabby, you'd probably like me to watch Netflix with you, but that's fine. But I'm working on a project. And so making these decisions about how and when and where, you're actually go, where does this fit in my life? I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it in my calendar. I'm going to schedule it. I'm going to take action. Like, if you don't know how to invest in equities, dedicate an hour a day to watching videos on, okay, well, how does the stock market work? How would I find the right assets? How would I value companies? I'm interested in technology companies. How are they different from value stocks? Just start asking questions, follow your curiosity. But taking that action is going to give you the clarity, and then you can start to act. You actually won't have the fear, and then the consistency is going to bring confidence. So you can start to do these small little steps. Maybe one of the considerations is like, I would invest, but I don't know my borrowing capacity. That's okay. We can put a link below. You can contact Dash.finance to get a borrowing capacity assessment. You can go online and do one online. You start to take small steps, because starting to take those small steps breaks down the barriers. It was only 2 weeks ago that you said we were on a tropical island somewhere, and you said, oh, I wish we could stay a little longer. And I said, okay. And then later that day, you said, oh, I wish my mum could see this place. I reckon she'd want to retire here. And I said, okay. And at lunchtime, I was like, well, okay, so I've found the flights for your mum, and I've also worked out the villa's still available next week. And then by 8 o'clock that night, we'd booked everything and it was done. And in a very short amount of action, you got everything that you wanted. You get everything you wanted. Bang, done.
Side note, you are an absolute catch, and I love you. But it's
good.
true. It's true. Like, you put things into action, and then they happened. And then within a couple of days, my mum was with us on an island in Thailand, and we were scooting around. Like, she was on the back of your bike, and we were just scooting around, and it was awesome. but it was
Yeah.
because there was an element of like, I declared what I wanted and then we took the action to make it happen.
Yeah. So let's turn this into a practical thing, right? So if you feel like you are stuck, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down all of the reasons you think you're stuck. And you might think that they're real reasons, by the way. I bet you think that they're real reasons. Oh, I can't do this because I have to wait for something. Oh, I've got it. I can't do that because some other thing's going to happen. But just write down all the things that you want to do. Maybe it's buying a property. Maybe it's selling a property. Maybe it's booking a trip overseas. Maybe it's asking out someone that you're attracted to. Maybe it's breaking up with someone that you've become unattracted to. Write down all the things you want to do. And then write down a list of all of the reasons that you think that all of the things that are standing in your way. And then ask yourself, what could you do to delete those hallucinations out of your life? Because most of the time it's nonsense. Most of the time it's just nonsense. Just literally write it down and go, okay, well, why can't I? Why can't I do that? Because I can guarantee you can do whatever you want in life. Stop dreaming up all of these things. Actually take them out of your mind and put them on paper and recognize that they're inconsequential, little, stupid little things that don't make any sense. Oh, well, I really want to work with Dashdot, but book a call. Click the link, book a call. Oh, I really want to, it's like my parents really want to go to Singapore. I said, okay, when do you want to go? Okay, well, how about in 4 weeks' time? Shit. And it's like these things, like they're not like the barriers between you and everything you want. They're just so inconsequential. And stop asking yourself what's getting in your way and ask yourself, why not? Why not? Why couldn't I? And then just start to dismantle all of those things. And I think if you can do that, you're actually going to find yourself accelerating in your life rather than standing still. And before you know it, and these things compound, in a short space of 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, your life will completely transform beyond your wildest dreams. If you had told me 5 years ago that we'd be living the life we are today, there's no way I would believe you. I would not have, even though I had all the vision boards and I was doing all the journaling, I was doing all that kind of stuff, I would have struggled to believe you. But what happens when you consistently pursue your dreams is your dreams become your reality. And if your dream is financial freedom, and if you know that you're not going to get there by saving and working in your job and all that kind of stuff, and you're not going to save your way to wealth, then you know that you need to invest. It's not rocket science. You can't save your way to wealth. So stop pretending like you can, because you're smarter than that. And then if you know you need to invest and you're not, ask yourself why. Why are you doing the thing why are you not doing the thing that you know you need to do? Oh, because I'm scared. What are you scared of? I'm scared I'll lose money. Well, how likely is it you're going to lose money? And what's the alternative? 100% chance of loss if you do nothing? Okay, all right. Okay, well, it's probably less risky for me to actually invest. Okay, got it. But what if I look stupid? What if people don't believe in me? Well, they're all going to die anyway, so it doesn't really matter. That's fine. Get over it. Move on. They probably won't be in your life in 3 years' time anyway. Who cares? Oh, but I need to do this other thing. Do you really? Could you take action first and sort it out later? Could you make progress? I was talking to someone the other day who lives here in Thailand. They're a Thai person. They got let go from their job. And I said, and they were very upset. And I said, well, what a wonderful opportunity to start your own business. They're in their health sector and they've been talking about starting their own business for ages. I was like, they were very upset they'd lost their job. And I was like, what a fantastic opportunity. Now you can go start your business. And they said, well, I've applied for this. I've applied to work at this really cool place in Bangkok. I'll find out in a month if I get that job. And I said, well, okay, why don't you look for a shop to rent so you can start your own business? Well, I'll wait to hear in a month's time if I get that job. And if I don't get it then I'll start looking. And I said, well, why don't you start looking now? Find the place, put a business plan together, start doing all the work. You don't have to sign the lease. But then in a month's time, if you get the job, your dream job, great, go take your dream job. But if you don't, you're already all you need to do is sign a lease, start your business ready to go. Start taking small action. And that was, by the way, that was last week. And today they're going to inspect a property to go and set up their own business,
Awesome.
which they wouldn't have
That's
done
awesome.
if they didn't dismantle that little belief, if they
Mm.
just waited. As everyone can start to dismantle these little beliefs because they're not real. They're just not real. Anyway, I think we've banged on about this enough. Gabby, what do you think?
I actually feel like we should maybe just wrap it up. I was going to do Q&A, but it felt like a good way to end it this week.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think
you
so
want to do
too.
Q&A? We can do
No,
Q&A.
no, I think it's good. I think we answered a few questions on the way through. I think it's good to encourage people to ask questions on the way through. We can stick around for 5 minutes if anyone does have any questions. If you have any questions, stick them in the chat. I don't mind hanging around for another few minutes. But it's also great for you to drop stuff during the course of the conversation because we get to weave it in, like we wove it in with a few different people. But if you do have any questions, if there's anything you want to ask of me, anything you want to ask of Gabby, maybe you need some personal advice, maybe you're stuck in a certain area, maybe you need some help with something, maybe we can help you right now. And maybe you just need to get over the fear of asking that in front of other people. I couldn't possibly ask that in a chat because then everyone would know how I feel. They're just people on the internet. They're not real. None of us are real. But if you do have any questions, drop them in the chat. We can stick around for a couple of minutes. Gabby, what's your biggest takeaway out of today's episode?
I think it always is a good reminder that action is kind of the king of all of this. And so for me, right, I'm constantly going through a journey of redefining who I am and the next level of myself. And I think this is actually really valuable for me. Like I feel like I'm gonna go back and listen to it again. Because sometimes we lose our way of like realizing how much of it is actually in our control and how much of the stories we're telling ourselves are not genuine. They're just our brain making some stuff up. And that process of inquiry, which is the Byron Katie approach of just inquiring of like, is this actually true? Is this belief, like, where did this belief come from? And how do I know that it's true? And just pulling it apart a little bit more. And I think you'll realize that a lot of this stuff is just not legitimate. It's just things that we picked up along the way, or we've picked up from our childhood or from people in our circles, or like cultural beliefs as well. These things that hold us back that we don't spend enough time really acknowledging because they're this like break on everything that you want to achieve, or all of these beliefs that just do really limit what you're capable of unless you inquire into them and pull them apart. And then from that point, taking the action that you know you need to take. Like I think you know what action you need to take. And I think you're letting these stories and these other external things that you definitely feel like are legitimate, you're letting those stop you from taking the action because you're scared of it. And
Most of the
realizing that like you said, the fear is not going to disappear. You take the action in spite of the fear and you do it anyway.
Realizing that most of the decisions we make, they're not permanent anyway. You can just undo them. Like I think about a lot of people in their current lives and they're unhappy with where they live, for example. Like I know lots of people that dream of living somewhere else, but they're scared of moving overseas. It's like, why? But what if it doesn't work out? It's like, well, you can just move back. Like if it doesn't work out, you can just move home again. Like it's fine. So, I think that understanding that you can take action and things aren't permanent and nothing is as bad as it seems. We're programmatically designed to see things as being worse than they are. Almost certainly it's not going to be that bad. Like almost certainly it's not going to be that bad.
And you will work it out. Whatever happens, you will work it out. You'll figure it out. Something will happen. Something you didn't expect will happen. You'll have to learn. You'll have to adapt. You'll have to grow, but you'll figure it out and you'll grow along the way.
100%. 100%.
Cool.
That's a great place to leave it. Let's wrap it up. Thanks, guys. Nice to spend some time with you again today. I love all of you guys who showed up live. If you're watching this not live, leave us a comment on YouTube or wherever you are. If you're listening to this on audio, make sure that you rate this. Give us a little, click all the buttons, thumbs up, subscribes, likes, rates, all that stuff.
Shares
is what we need. Shares is what we need. Shares is what we need because we want to be able to share this around and help more people to grow. We're here to help you grow. We want to help as many people grow as possible. So if you can share this with someone that you care about and you want them to grow, that would be awesome. Till next week, we'll see you then. Bye for now.